Hello, everyone. So, this is something I get asked about a fair amount, and I do have quite a bit of experience in this field, both theoretically and practically. And given the age of a lot of my viewers, a lot of you are getting your first or second job, or you're trying to move out of minimum wage work into something that requires a bit more skill. So, I get asked questions about interviews, about job applications, all that kind of stuff. So I figure I'm going to share my knowledge with you all, what I found worked in the past and what I find doesn't work, and just kind of some general advice and what to expect. Now, I have complained about this frequently in the past, but that's something everybody goes through with. I have found over time some things are more successful. That is, I feel the interview went well, I get a follow up interview, I get another test or another callback or something. So I would say from my experience and from people I've talked to, there are certain things that work better than others. And once again, this is just me. This is my personality. This is how I do things. It's not necessarily the case, but I'm going to at least try to give you some sort of perspective, I think. So the most important thing to any job search process is to understand it's going to take a while. Maybe you're going to get lucky and you'll get an offer right away. Like one time when I was doing a job search, I just randomly applied to something. I got a call like the next week. I did two interviews and they hired me. So that happened after like 6 months of like the grind, interview after interview. Some places were like six interviews in a row, and then just suddenly I just something clicked and it happened. So your job search thing can be anywhere from a week to like 6 months to longer if you're looking for something specialized. So it's going to be very variable. If people are telling you it takes X amount of time, if people are saying, oh, you should have found something by now, ignore them. Discouragement is the worst thing you can do, or rather can be is the worst thing for your job search. So just keep in mind a lot of it is up to chance. A lot of it is up to like what you're looking for, the area you're in, the industry you're in, how much experience you have. It's very, very complicated, and there's no right or wrong amount of time. And once again, if it goes too fast and you just take the first thing maybe that you get offered, that may not work out well either. So persistence is key. Number two, you'll get better at it over time. Everybody sucks at their first couple interviews. Much like anyone who tries, if you've ever tried writing, your first couple stories are horrible. The first couple videos you do are often bad. I'm not saying everyone sucks at the beginning, but I'm saying it's very common when you're doing anything for the first time, particularly something this large and complicated, to immediately get good at it. Over time, you'll find interviewers tend to ask similar questions. Same thing with the type of resume they're looking for, or if there's a sheet you have to fill out, or whatever. You'll get used to it, you'll get more comfortable with it, and you'll get better at it. So even if you're horrible starting out, it will get better over time. Now, the next one, and this is very difficult, once again, and I certainly have still struggled with this, is if you don't get an offer or you don't get a position, it doesn't reflect poorly on you. The whole thing, once again, is incredibly complex, and often there's a lot of smoke and mirrors involved in it. So, like, a lot of job postings aren't even real. They have to put them out, but they've already hired someone internally, or they're just fishing to see if they can get someone who's overqualified at a lower than market rate. There's lots of reasons, and a lot of the time the jobs aren't even real. So that's like number one. Number two, the posting itself might be misleading. That is, they're looking for something completely different from what they posted and no one fit it. Oftentimes, like different managers won't have talked to each other. There won't be budget for the new position, or the budget won't have been like finalized or something. There's all kinds of like just nonsense before you even get into the interview process that can torpedo your chances, and you won't even like know about it. Number two, there often is somebody who's better than you. Sometimes it's just somebody they like more. Sometimes it's someone with a better skill set. Sometimes they just decide not to hire anyone. The point of the matter is, in a lot of cases, you just have no idea why you didn't get an offer or why you didn't get hired. It doesn't reflect badly on you. Sometimes you just don't have the skill set that fits. There's nothing wrong with that. There's an infinite number of skills you can have, and not having all of them isn't like that big an issue. So that's just something to keep in mind. One thing I have found, and we'll talk about this more when we get to interviews, I find over preparing and overthinking is generally worse than under. And maybe people think that's really weird, but I find generally my most successful interviews are ones where I only spend an hour or two doing prep. And I kind of go into it almost as if I don't really care if I get the job. I'm just a lot more relaxed, a lot more conversational. And it tends to go a lot better than if I have like a whole bunch of notes written up. So when in doubt, just be honest. Be honest but professional, and kind of try to be friendly but professional. I think that's better than trying to play mind games and trying to guess what the other person wants. Because that's very hard. Everyone will give you different information. Finally, job postings and descriptions very seldom tell the whole story. This is a kind of a rule that I found. If you are qualified for, say, more than half of what they list on a job description, if you have more than half of the qualifications, that's good enough. Employers will just throw everything in the kitchen sink under qualifications for a job. Like they'll put a master's there, they'll put like 5 different coding languages, they'll put like 10 years of experience or whatever. And most of the time, none of that is necessary. I've gotten interviews for jobs I was totally unqualified for by their description. And then when I talked to the actual people, the job didn't seem to require any of that. It depends who you're talking to. HR has a very different understanding than the hiring manager, than the head of the department. So what I'm saying is, I know it's stupid, I know it's nonsensical, but if you're largely qualified, don't worry if there's a bunch of stuff there that you have no idea about. They're often just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks in the end. So I wouldn't worry too much about it if you don't think you're qualified. Same thing with the job description. Job descriptions are normally, I don't know if wrong is the right term for it, but in pretty much every interview I've ever had, the way the person describes the job during the interview bears very little resemblance to how it's in the description. I mean, it's the same role, but the description doesn't normally like say what you're actually going to be working on, like what the company actually does, what the corporate culture's like, what the department's like, who you report to. Like the actual practical aspect, like 90% of what your job is going to be, is not really in the description. And there's often a lot of like corporate lingo in it. There's like, oh, you have to be a master in this particular program. Then you get there and the program's like some easy drag and drop thing. And it made it look way more complicated. So I think if you get an interview from something you're not sure of, and it's not going to be like a complete waste of your time. Like if it's a phone interview and it's like 15 minutes, there's really no reason not to do that. If nothing else, the practice is good. If it's something you aren't really sure about and you have to drive like 3 hours, then maybe that's not a good idea. But if it's something locally, it'll only take an hour or two to go do it. You might as well go and see what they have to say. You don't have to know whether or not you're going to accept the position because you're interviewing them at the same time that they're interviewing you. You don't have to, until you sign a contract, you aren't under any obligation to them. So if let's say you apply for something and then like one of the managers in the department wants to interview you, and you go in, you can see maybe what the office is like or talk to them over the phone, see if they're the kind of person that you'd like to work with, because oftentimes it's the person who you're going to work with who does the hiring. And it gives you that opportunity. Like in some cases, I've applied for things I didn't really care about it. But then I've talked to whoever the person is, and they've been like super enthusiastic. They say like all this nice stuff about the company. They're like, "Oh, I'll be working with you," and they seem like the kind of nice person that you'd want to work with. And then that makes you more enthusiastic about it. So, if you can, if nothing else, it gives you some practice answering questions and that kind of thing. So, hopefully that just kind of gives you a bit of a background about how to approach a thing at all. It can be a very long, difficult, trying process, but it is something you will get better at, and you just need to keep up on it. And so long as you do that, you're probably going to get somewhere. That's not to say you don't have to frequently change course throughout, but it's very hard to make any real predictions about it. So just keep it in mind. It's generally speaking not you. You might obviously you want to get better at these things. You might have to get some coaching on how to do interviews properly, etc. But overall, it's just something to keep in mind. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. Next up, we're going to do a video on getting your first job. So, hope you enjoyed that. If you like the series, let me know, and I'll keep it going. Anyways, this is Argent. God bless, and